Thanks, boys, for the help. You need to tell your primary people that you've been helping cleaning up, and you'll get some Bible bucks. Okay, so let's get to the next section here. Building, protecting, and sharing wealth. How many of you find it easy to share your money? How many of you find it easy to share your wealth? Let me just see. Share your wealth. Easy? Okay, well, let's see how easy it is. Okay.
You didn't say children or relatives or, you didn't stipulate who to share with. You just made a bold statement as share. And there's a lot of difference between with who.
That is very true. Okay, who you share it is important. But what about sharing your wealth with people you don't know? Sorry? Can have a generous heart, yes. But you're right, because with our families we are very generous. Yeah? And as we get more distant from the nuclear family, we get less generous. Okay? Alright. So building wealth is simple. Now we may not agree with that. It's very simple. It's not really complicated, but it's not always easy. And that's where we fall down. Because as we said, there's only 3 ways to build wealth yesterday. So it's not really complicated. It's how you do it that makes the difference. Now, wealth is a real blessing. Do you see it like that? Do you think you are wealthy?
Wealth allows you to help other people.
Absolutely.
You choose the way and the path. If you work wealthy, well then you can't help people. So obviously, the more better off you are, the more people you can help.
Now, that is a paradigm that everyone doesn't have. But that's exactly the way we should be. But how many of you think you're wealthy? Let me see. Put your hands up. How many of you think you're wealthy? Okay. Well, most of you think you're wealthy. What does wealth mean to you? What does wealth mean to you?
Wealth is not necessarily monetary. Wealth could be something of value to you.
Mm-hmm. Very good. So there's a distinction between wealth and riches. Okay?
Health is wealth. It's not a monetary wealth, but there are many things in life like that you don't put a monetary value on. But if you haven't got, I know plenty of millionaires and people with lots of money, and they're the most miserable people you'll ever hope to meet. Because that's the way they've been in life to get where they've got. They're chasing the one focused goal.
As Christians, where should we be? Just think about that. Okay? Now, if you compare ourselves to the rest of the world, we are wealthy beyond compare. If you travel as much as I do to developing countries, you realize how wealthy you are and how blessed you are. And I'm sure you know that, but I just want to say that because we just don't sit back sometimes and reassess what our wealth is. A lot of the time we tie our wealth up in property or something else, and we don't experience the benefits of wealth. Okay, spend less than you earn. We mentioned that before. Pay off non-deductible debts, and in fact pay off all debts. Okay? Be conscious of your net worth. How many of you think about your net worth? Just think about that. We don't. We think about the money in the bank that we can spend. But if you know your net worth, it'll give you a different paradigm. Because if you know your net worth, you have a lot more power to change your life and your lifestyle. Invest in wealth building assets. We spoke about good assets and bad assets. So invest in your good assets. Save monthly. We need to save money regularly. That's a great habit to have. We spoke about this before, just recapping. Compounding interest, use compounding interest, which means time is your best friend. Get a mortgage through a mortgage broker. The reason being they can look at a whole lot of mortgages and you're not locked into one bank if you go to a bank. Okay? Yeah, get a mortgage through a mortgage broker, not necessarily a bank. Because if you go to the bank can only offer you their products.
Okay.
Right? If you go to a broker, he can look at all the products and tell you this is what's available. Yeah, that's the reason. Yep, okay. Adequate insurance. If you've got mortgages and you've got young kids, think about insurance, because that's going to make a difference. If you die, you don't leave a debt, it can get wiped out. Okay. Paradigms worth considering. Are you an owner or a steward? What's it? Owner? Okay. How many of you think you're an owner? Let me see. It's okay. This is not you're not going to get fined for making a comment. Okay. Very good.
We're a joint tenant with the government, and they changed the title deeds on your whole property. You might think you own it, and you pay the...
But you don't.
You're a joint tenant now.
Okay. Because the governments can resume your land at any time. Okay. Okay, let me give you a paradigm shift here. I'm talking to Christians here, right? And Seventh-day Adventist Christians. And I'm assuming, let me give you my assumption, that we believe that Christ is coming soon. Now, I don't know whether you share that with me, but I honestly believe Christ is coming soon. So that's my world view and my paradigm I'm coming from. Okay? I'm not setting times and dates, but I'm just trying to tell you that. So when I speak, you know where I'm coming from. All right, are you an owner or a steward? Let me give you this. I am very good. I'm never an owner. God owns everything. I'm only a steward. That will change the way you look at things. Okay? You want to be the best steward you can. Our materialistic society drives people to own things. That's in our language. I own my house. I own my car. Hey, someone's blessed you to get that. Okay, I'm just trying to change your paradigm, because if you think like that, you will be abundantly blessed. It's like the parable of, the talents. Knowing where your money comes from and what you should do with it, being good stewards, makes the difference. Okay? So, I'd urge you to think about that. Don't be an owner. When you're an owner, you're earthbound. Yeah? Did you get that? When you're an owner, you're earthbound. But when you're a steward, you're heavenbound. Okay? Okay, raise your awareness of money. Sometimes we don't really want to focus on money. We think it's difficult, or we don't want to do that. The more you can think about it, the more you can study it, the more you know what you have, the more you can do with it. So don't make money a negative thing. It's a positive thing. And to be a good steward, you need to know what you have and what you can do with it. Preconceptions versus reality. We assume a lot of things in life. And we do have to assume things, because it will be too difficult to make decisions all the time. But with money too, see what your preconceptions are, because your preconceptions will limit you. I'll tell you a quick story. I got lots of stories to tell you, but I'll tell you this story. It happened in the Solomon Islands. And I'd finished a fly and build, and the last trip was to visit a village. But this village happened to be on a coral island. Okay, so we had to get a canoe out there. Now the people who lived on the island, or on the islands, they lived there because the Highlanders used to come and raid their houses. But the Highlanders couldn't swim, so when they built their islands, they couldn't get to them, so they were safe. So we got a canoe out there, and one of the guys there took me for a tour. So he took me around and he showed me this place where they sacrificed pigs. And there was a sacrifice going on, so I asked him lots of questions. They took me around further and showed me the skulls of all the previous high priests. And I'd come from a place, I was born in Sri Lanka, and I'd known a lot about, devil worship and spirit worship. And so he told me eventually he'd like me to meet the chief priest. Now after seeing all of these things, I was getting a bit nervous, I was on an island, and I certainly wasn't going to swim across because there were lots of sharks in the water. So I had no option, and he was walking behind me, and we showed me the way. And we turned up at this hut, and I couldn't see inside because the huts didn't have windows. Okay? And he said, go in. So I stepped in. I had no choice. He was behind me. I couldn't go backwards, and I couldn't leave the island. And the first thing I felt was my eyes were burning, because most of these places have fires inside the hut, and it's full of smoke. So I couldn't see anything, and I was getting really, really worried. And as I kept looking, I could notice someone sitting on a couch, and I noticed blood on his mouth, on his lips, and I thought, I don't think this is a good situation for me. So my first reaction was, I really have to get out, but I really can't get out. This guy was standing in the doorway, and I thought, this is really, really bad news. I could feel the hair stand on the back of my neck, but I didn't have any option. So I went forward, and I put my hand out, and he grabbed my hand, and I shook his hand, and I said, it's good to meet you. Now, I didn't think of what I was saying. And instantly he said, well, it's nice to meet you. Now, the moment he spoke in English, I realized I could at least talk and negotiate my way out of this. And as I went on, I kept talking to him, and he gave me a whole history. Actually, he was a previous Adventist. Can you believe this? Anyhow, he's gone back to his old ways, and he'd fought in the Second World War and all this sort of stuff. And as I got closer to him and I looked at him further, I noticed it was betel nut that he was chewing. Now, you might laugh at this, but it just shows you the preconception you come from. Just totally colors what you see. Okay? So be careful of your preconceptions. And you sometimes don't even know, or you're not aware of your preconceptions. So be very careful, because with finance, we can have lots of preconceptions. Okay? All right, abundance mentality versus greed mentality. What's the difference between having abundance and having a greed mentality?
Well, maybe a greed mentality is that you place it above God.
Good point. Greed mentality could be that you place things above God. Let me give you an idea. An abundance mentality frees you to give. A greed mentality makes you want to hold. You want to accumulate versus share. One's self-centered and one's other person-centered. Now, we may not spend much time thinking about these terms, but that's the different paradigm we live in. As Christians, greed has no place with us. We have been abundantly blessed. We need to be in a space to actually give to others. Okay? Any thoughts on that? Have you thought about this before? Yeah? All right. The next one is, you are not what you have. It sounds simple. Just imagine that. Are you what you own? What you have?
You can't take it to heaven with you, so it's only got a use on this planet. And for me, I'm looking at the greed there, and I thought to myself, if greed in anything, no matter what it is, money or anything on this earth which is secular, is they don't give. They're it's like the Christian companies give to, World Vision or whatever the thing is. The other companies don't. They don't give. And that's the difference between a Christian company and a non-Christian company.
Good analogy, okay? That's the stats around the world. Christian countries give much more than the other countries. Mind you, the other countries don't have as much as the Western countries. But if you just think about it,
Because they're not Christian.
Correct. Now just think about it. This is really an interesting paradigm. If the Christian countries have a lot more wealth than the other countries, could it be that Christianity has had an influence? Okay, I'd like to suggest to you that it is yes. There's a whole lot of literature on that whole topic. We don't think about that, but being Christian really frees us up to receive and to give. So you are not what you have. You know, if you have to get more things, where does that leave you? The more things you have,
Materialistic thinking.
correct, but remember, our Western society is geared towards materialism. Our marketing would not work if it couldn't tap into greed and ownership and having more. But the happiest people in the world don't need to have money. You can have money and be happy. And believe me, I've seen lots of people who have no money and are also happy.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes.
When you're blessed as a Christian to own a house and property, how come as Christian that the majority doesn't take homeless people in or provide accommodation? I've seen so many times people have so much wealth, they're blessed, and they're making a home for themselves, and it can become first. I never really experienced when people, only a few, they open their homes and invite people in, adopted kids, youth, put them in from the street. The majority as Christians are doing it. I'm always wondering why.
It's a very good question. I don't have all the answers.
Yeah. I
But-
just wonder upon this sort of-
Sure, but it's a very good question. A lot of us are fearful of the consequences, you know, because you don't know what these people are like. But I do take your point. We can do a lot more. Now, how do we do a lot more? It's when we are aware of our blessings and how we can bless others. Yeah? Now, I've heard some horrific stories about foster parents and foster kids and all sorts of stuff. But the whole point is don't let the few bad things cloud the wonderful things that are done. Often, as people, we tend to find the exception to the rule. Always live by the rule, you'll get a better result. Well, thank you for that point. Yeah. So that's another challenge for you. Just think of where you can share what you have. It's your blessing. You've got to manage the risk, but certainly look at where you can share. Yeah, thank you. Are you a slave or free?
A Christian would be free because he's in Christ and he knows the story of Christianity, but the one before, you are not what you are. A Christian knows what he's got, he knows that he comes into this world with nothing and he's going to leave it with nothing. He has a different paradigm and a different thought process to a heathen or an atheist or an agnostic.
Correct. Thank you. So my question, are you a slave or free? Yes?
Asleep.
Asleep. Okay. All right. Let me just think about this. I've just come from a country where we're dealing with slavery, where young girls are sold into prostitution, and it's a rescue program. But I was absolutely amazed to see a new trend where young boys are sold into factories as slaves. And another trend where babies are rented out for people to use to beg. The babies are usually drugged for the day. Now this is absolutely amazing. This is something that we are sponsoring through AsianAid. You'd never hear this stuff. And I was just shocked. And I interviewed the people who are involved in this. But we think we are free. Let me tell you something. Most people in a Western society are slaves to the bank. Okay? That's just how it is. We don't see it because we enjoy the luxuries that we buy with the money. But if something goes wrong, I'm sure you know of people who are in so much distress.
But
Because-
Christians too, they
Yeah.
are getting in debt and take loans because they're too frightened to rent a house in a community. I live in a community. I live in Kempsey, South Kempsey. It doesn't matter because I know God keeps me safe, right? That's what I believe. I pray, and I'm on my own, so I'm not frightened. But often I hear from Christian people, I would not even let my wife drive through Southside. Where's the faith? Where's the trust? Right? It's a serious question.
It is a serious
You
question.
can give a lot more.
Mhm. And a lot of people have something that's way beyond what they need. The size of the house, or the type of car. We could easily, I'm not suggesting you do this, I'm saying we could easily downsize and be free of the burden of debt. Because everything that's on TV and we hear from other people is to get us into debt. The banking system won't be so profitable if you don't get into debt. The marketing people won't make their money if you don't get into debt. Sorry? You don't own a car, okay. Okay, well there we go, an example. But it's just a thought. You know, we need these things. Okay, so I'm not saying don't get them. I mean, I own a car and I own a house and all of that stuff. I'm not suggesting you go out and sell everything. But just think about it. And you don't want to be in debt. You wanted to say something.
Oh, in my apprentice bricklaying days, the boss used to marvel at how much, I'd say $100,000 loan over 25 years, what you paid back was, he thought it was disgusting.
Yeah, I guess that's one way to look at it, yes.
The banks with money is really the largest Ponzi scheme this world's ever seen, because they create money on paper that is not backed by gold or anything tangible. It's a paper entry.
Mhm.
And the average person has got no idea how that whole system
No.
is familiar with the Ponzi scheme.
It was backed by gold, but not anymore.
No.
Correct.
Yeah, and I wonder why should we only think about it? It's almost like think about if you want to become a Christian or not. You know what I mean? Don't get in debt because that money is not yours. Why do you do something and build on something you don't own? You know what I mean? It's like a lot of people could, instead of not to think about it, get real in life, and we could change some serious situations.
We could. But the point here is, thank you for that. You need to think about where you want to be, especially as Christians. Yeah? Use it or lose it. Are you a last day survivor? This is my kids' program is called Last Day Survivor, okay? Use it or lose it? What's going to happen to your money?
It's depreciating if you don't use it.
That's correct. But what else is going to happen to your money? Let me assure you, one thing's going to happen. If you are a Christian and you believe Christ is going to come soon, it's going to go up in flames. Okay, so you can work hard to fuel the flames. That's your choice. Or you can work hard to get people to Christ. Different paradigm. I'm not being negative here, I'm just giving you another way to think. Okay? What you do with what you think is up to you. But we have the opportunity and the privilege to make choices in our lives. And if you link your choice to your belief system, and you honestly believe in Christ and He's soon coming, you do something about it. That is your choice. Okay? Your way, the highway, or God's way. How many of you can relate to this? God's way never comes into it. We talk about it, we pray about it. Do we really want to follow His way? It's a tough place to be, because it takes your choices sometimes out of your control, and to let Him lead, because His way is far better than yours or mine. You know, we talk about it, but we've got to engage our thoughts to our heart. Unless we have our emotions engaged, we don't do anything about it. We can talk and talk and talk. That's where it's going to end. Seek treasure, not trinkets. Do you know the difference between treasure and trinkets? Have you thought about it?
Well, you have treasures in heaven, but my mind's limited. I only thought of my baby sister having trinkets.
Okay, so what are trinkets? Of value or little value? They have little value. They are shiny, they look nice, but they are not any value. So can you differentiate between treasure and trinkets? Let me assure you, most of the things you see around you are trinkets. We need to pray for God to give us insight to differentiate between the two. If we understand the difference between trinkets and treasure, our relationships are going to be better, our jobs are going to be better, our outcomes are going to be better, and we're going to reap the rewards in heaven too. Okay, so remember, the road to success is always under construction, and relationships are the currency of the universe. Whether it's doing better at home, family, work, other relationships, or even making money. It's the relationships that you make that will make the difference. Thank you. If you've got any questions, just ask. Yeah.